There are some stories that sound too extraordinary to be real. They begin in places so small and forgotten that no one could imagine greatness growing there. Yet every once in a while, someone rises from those impossible circumstances and changes the world forever. This is one of those stories. Long before the bright lights, the sold-out concerts, and the worldwide fame, there was simply a little girl growing up in the mountains of Tennessee. She had no expensive clothes, no wealthy parents, and no powerful connections. Her family struggled to put food on the table, and every new day brought another challenge. But even in the middle of hardship, she carried something no one could take away from her, an imagination that refused to accept the limits of her surroundings. Most people today know Dolly Parton as a legendary singer, songwriter, actress, businesswoman, and philanthropist. Millions recognize her unmistakable voice, her unforgettable personality, and the timeless songs that have become part of American culture. But very few people truly understand how difficult her journey really was. Behind every smile was another obstacle. Behind every success was another painful sacrifice. And behind every standing ovation was a lifetime of determination that very few could have survived. Her life wasn't built on luck. It was built on relentless perseverance. The story begins deep, inside the great Smoky Mountains, where life was far removed from the glamour people associate with country music today. Families worked from sunrise until sunset simply to survive. Children learned responsibility long before they learned comfort. Every meal mattered, every dollar mattered, and every opportunity was precious. This was the world Dolly entered. She was born into a large family where love was abundant, but money was almost non-existent. The small cabin they called home had very little space, yet it was always filled with voices, laughter, prayers, and music. While they couldn't afford many material possessions, they possessed something that would quietly shape Dolly's future more than anything else: stories and songs. Her mother often sang traditional mountain ballads while caring for the family. Those melodies became part of Dolly's earliest memories. Before she understood success, she understood emotion. Before she learned business, she learned storytelling. Music wasn't entertainment. It was comfort. It was hope. It was survival. Even as a child, Dolly seemed different. She watched people closely. She listened carefully to conversations, remembered tiny details, and transformed ordinary experiences into stories inside her imagination. While other children simply played outside, she dreamed about writing songs that people would never forget. But dreams are difficult to protect when reality keeps interrupting. There were days when the family worried about food. Winters felt endless. Simple necessities that many people take for granted were considered luxuries, yet instead of allowing those hardships to destroy her confidence, Dolly slowly turned them into motivation. Every struggle became another reason to work harder. Every disappointment became another reason to keep believing. She often looked beyond the mountains surrounding her home and wondered what kind of life existed outside that small community. She imagined cities she had never visited, audiences she had never seen, and opportunities that seemed impossible for someone from her background. Most people around her believed life would always remain the same. Dolly refused to believe that. Even at a young age, she carried an unusual confidence that confused many adults around her. It wasn't arrogance. It was conviction. She genuinely believed that one day her voice would reach people far beyond those mountains. Still, believing in yourself is one thing. Convincing everyone else is something entirely different. As Dolly grew older, she realized that talent alone wouldn't change her life. Thousands of people dreamed about becoming singers. Very few actually succeeded. The music industry was filled with rejection, broken promises, and people willing to take advantage of hopeful young artists. She, knew the road ahead would be difficult. She simply didn't know how difficult. Every challenge waiting in. Nashville would test not only her talent, but also her patience, confidence, and emotional strength. The world would question her appearance. It would question her voice. It would question her intelligence. Some people would laugh before giving her a chance. Others would dismiss her before hearing a single song. But none of them realized they were underestimating someone whose greatest strength had already been forged through years of hardship. The mountains had taught her resilience. Poverty had taught her gratitude. Family had taught her compassion, and music had taught her hope. Those lessons would become the foundation of everything that followed. The little girl who once looked beyond the hills, dreaming of another life, was about to take the first step toward becoming one of the most recognizable women in entertainment history, but reaching that destination would require sacrifices no one could have predicted. The road ahead would bring incredible success. It would also bring heartbreak. It would test friendships, challenge relationships, and force Dolly to make painful decisions that would shape the rest of her life. Because sometimes, the price of achieving your biggest dream is much greater than anyone can see from the outside. And for Dolly Parton, the journey was only just beginning. Leaving the mountains behind was the hardest decision Dolly had ever made. She knew that boarding a bus to Nashville meant saying goodbye to the only life she had ever known. Her family didn't have money to support a dream that seemed almost impossible. Success in country music was something people read about in magazines, not something they expected to happen to a girl from a tiny cabin in rural Tennessee. But Dolly had already made up her mind. She hugged her family, packed the few belongings she owned, and stepped onto a Greyhound bus carrying little more than hope, determination, and a notebook filled with songs. As the mountains slowly disappeared behind her, excitement mixed with fear. For the first time in her life, she was completely alone. Nashville was unlike anything she had ever seen. The city was crowded with talented musicians, hopeful singers, experienced producers, and ambitious writers. Every street seemed filled with someone chasing the exact same dream. Almost immediately, reality hit harder than she expected. Record companies weren't waiting for her. Music executives weren't searching for unknown teenagers. Instead, she found herself standing outside office after office, hoping someone would simply give her a few minutes. Most never did. Some politely declined, others barely looked up before telling her they weren't interested. More than once she was told that her appearance was too unusual, her voice too different, and her style too old-fashioned. Some believed audiences would never accept someone who looked and sounded like Dolly Parton. Those comments hurt, but they never stopped. Her every rejection only strengthened the promise she had made to herself back in the Smoky Mountains. She would never quit. To survive, Dolly accepted almost any opportunity connected to music. She recorded demonstration songs for songwriters, performed wherever she could, and spent countless hours writing new material. Money remained scarce. There were days when she worried about paying rent. There were nights when she questioned whether chasing such a difficult dream had been a mistake. Still, every morning she woke up believing tomorrow might finally be different. Eventually, that persistence began opening small doors. People who initially ignored her started noticing something unusual. She wasn't simply another singer trying to copy everyone else. She had her own voice, her own stories, her own personality. That uniqueness, slowly, became her greatest advantage. A turning point came when she joined Porter Wagoner's television program. Overnight, millions of viewers who had never heard of Dolly suddenly saw a young performer with incredible energy and unmistakable talent. Her popularity exploded. Concert audiences grew larger. Record sales increased. New opportunities appeared almost every month. From the outside, it looked as though every dream was finally coming true. But success often creates problems that failure never could. Although Porter had helped introduce her to a national audience, Dolly soon realized she wanted more creative freedom. She had spent years writing songs from her own experiences, and she wanted people to hear them exactly as she imagined them. That difference created growing tension. Respect slowly turned into disagreement. Professional discussions became arguments. The partnership that had once transformed her career now felt increasingly restrictive. Walking away seemed impossible. Porter had played a major role in her success, and leaving carried enormous financial and professional risks. Many people advised her to stay. Others warned that leaving would destroy everything she had built, but Dolly understood something important. Real success means very little if you lose control of your own voice. With enormous courage, she finally made the painful decision to move forward independently. Before leaving, she wrote one final song. It wasn't written with anger. It wasn't written with bitterness. Instead, it expressed gratitude, respect, and acceptance. That song became "I Will Always Love You." Years later, it would become one of the most famous songs ever recorded, touching millions of people across generations. Now working independently, Dolly entered the most successful period of her career. One unforgettable hit followed another. Songs like Jolene, Here You Come Again, 9 to 5, and many others transformed her from a country star into an international icon. Hollywood soon came calling. Movies introduced her to audiences who had never listened to country music. Television appearances made her one of the most recognizable personalities in America. Business opportunities multiplied. Unlike many entertainers, Dolly carefully studied contracts and publishing rights. She understood that creativity alone wasn't enough. Artists also needed to protect their work. That wisdom allowed her to build an empire extending far beyond music. She invested in businesses, created Dollywood, expanded her brand, and became one of the most successful entrepreneurs in entertainment. Yet despite enormous wealth, she never forgot where she came from. She remembered the children who couldn't afford books. She remembered families struggling just as hers once had. Instead of simply enjoying her success, she chose to give back. Her imagination library began providing free books to children, eventually reaching millions around the world. When natural disasters devastated communities in Tennessee, she immediately stepped forward with financial assistance. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she donated generously to medical research that contributed to vaccine development. Again and again, she proved that generosity mattered more than publicity. Her greatest achievements weren't measured only in awards. They were measured in lives changed, of course. Life continued bringing personal pain. She experienced heartbreaking losses within her family. She mourned friends and loved ones. There were periods when the pressures of fame became emotionally overwhelming. Behind the laughter that audiences loved was someone carrying burdens the public rarely saw. But every difficult season reinforced the same lesson she had learned as a little girl: keep moving forward, keep believing, keep creating. Today, Dolly Parton is celebrated not only for her remarkable career, but also for the kindness she has shown throughout her life. She became proof that someone can achieve extraordinary success without losing compassion. The little girl from a one-room cabin grew into one of the most admired women in the world, not because she was perfect, but because she never allowed hardship to define her future. Her journey reminds us that humble beginnings never determine where a person can end up. Talent opens doors. Hard work keeps them open. Kindness makes people remember you. forever. Long after the awards fade and the headlines disappear, Dolly Parton's greatest legacy will not simply be the songs she wrote. It will be the hope she gave to millions of people who believed their dreams were impossible. She showed that poverty does not destroy ambition. Failure does not erase potential. Rejection does not decide destiny, and no matter how many obstacles appear along the way, one determined person can rewrite their own story. That is why Dolly Parton's life continues to inspire, generation after generation, not because she became famous, but because she never forgot the little girl who dared to believe that even the biggest dreams can begin inside the smallest places.